Okay, so we're back for video number 2 for week 3. So, we were here a little while ago. I'll just finish off the top very quickly using a nice size brush. And I'm going to just paint the rest of this image. Hopefully you will be a little bit more careful than I would. But I think, with this lesson, I think it's going to be good. As you can see, once you don't have that flat color, it's a little bit more forgiving, with your layer masking. I'll take off my email. Okay. All right, so just paint that in there. Okay. So we have that image, and we can go into the hair and make the hair a lot more, go in and get a lot closer to the hair. Um, and if you take out some of these, if you take removing some of the hair, because there's just a lot of like very, very fine areas. That looks fine. So one of the things, I'm gonna make the image a little bit bigger. So the scale, you can scale that background image. So what's the cool things about layer masking and layer adjustments in the whole. So when you want to make adjustments to a layer, because we've masked it out, we can make adjustments to this layer or this layer independently or both at the same time. So with the adjustments panel, you want to go to window and adjustments. So if you want to do things like color balance, brightness, contrast, levels, curves, you want to do it on the adjustment layer. And you want to create an adjustment layer. You don't actually want to do it, just by doing it on this particular layer. So what you want to do is, if you select, let's say we want to mess with the color balance on here. Once you click that, you will see the adjustment layer drops right above where you have it. And that means, and then this other uh, properties will come up. So your properties panel will be here if you don't have it already selected or viewable, uh, visible. Make sure it's here in the window. And then you could adjust the color balance. So notice I'm adjusting the color balance, and it's only changing on the bottom layer, right? Now you may or may not have the setting set the way I have it, so I'll show you how to do that. Now make sure on this little properties that this little box is checked with the arrow. If this is not checked, the entire color balance will affect all the layers at the bottom. Now right now you can't see this one is not really much because this is hiding that. So everything on this layer, everything I adjust affects both the figure in the front as well as the background. I may or may not want to do that, right? I may only want to adjust the front layer. So if I do that and I check that button, it's only going to affect the front layer. Now, if I wanted to put an adjustment layer on the back, I could. Also, let's say I wanted to make this black and white. Um, and I can do it here as well. So let's say I wanted to make the background just black and white. Notice the adjustment layer just affects this and this only, right? Because it's below this image. So it's only going to affect what's below it. This color balance will only affect what's below it because I have this checkbox on here. Okay, so here's black and white. I could have done it here as well. So you may, you've seen a lot of these things where, you want to get the image to be a certain color, and then you want the background to be black and white. This is one of the ways that you can do it. And because you have done the layer masking, it's irrespective of, whatever color, correction or whatever color that you want to kind of play around with. And you can totally, focus on just this image with this color balance or just the background image or both if you wanted to. So layer masking is a lot there. Uh, we'll do a little bit more with channel masking. And actually next week I'll go into that tutorial about the hair. a different method when you kind of want to go for things like really, really fine hair behind the background. This image didn't have that much, but here there's a lot going on with a lot of extra extraneous like hair and stuff. So I would have to, go in and, get my brush and I am on. I would try to go a lot closer, but because I'm deleting or removing, I'm actually removing a lot of the hair, and you may or may not want to do that. But I'll go over another tutorial that kind of goes into the hair a little bit more, um, a better technique to get things like fine hair. But for this particular tutorial, I think it was fine to kind of do it this way. And you may have, again, as you go closer, you may want to adjust the opacity a little bit. Up here, right, and the more you paint over it, it's the more it'll go away. If you need to adjust, you have to readjust the opacity a little bit. Went over there a little bit too much. Again, you have to also look at, why is the image going to be used? And if it's something that's going to be really examined very closely, if it's a billboard that's far away, do you need to go in like super close and get everything sort of fine and perfect? Of course, my thing will always be get as fine and perfect as you need to, because you may use it for more than one. It may be an ad that you're doing, but you're also using it for a billboard and a web page, and so it's always good to do it, to the best the first time. That way, if you have to reuse it at any point, if you want to change the background out and put something else in there, obviously this doesn't look as good with this color background as this may do. That would certainly come in here and clean all that up in there. But layer masking, it's a lot to do. I showed you a little bit about the adjustment layers. You can kind of play around with different adjustments, and you can have more than one adjustment um, in there. And once you select that adjustment, a different property will show up for each adjustment. So here we have the vibrance. Notice a little change. I haven't done anything to any of them yet. So if I want to go and adjust it, I just click on that layer and I'll go in and adjust it here, brightness, contrast. And once again, these little boxes are all selected. So just the one layer. With the vibrance, I can make it sort of more vibrant. Play with the saturation a little bit. There's a lot of interesting um, adjustments that you can make on every layer, but you definitely want to do this way, because if you were to actually do all these adjustments on without using an adjustment layer, and you can, um, through the filters, you can come here and you can do a lot of these different things. If you don't use the adjustment layer to do this stuff, then what you'll end up happening is that you would have to go back in the history and undo something that you didn't like. So if you didn't like this color, but you already did it, you'd have to go back in the history to undo it, because you already did it on the image. But with the adjustments layer, if you don't like the vibrance, you just hide it. If you don't like the brightness and contrast, just hide it. Or if you like the brightness or the vibrance, but you don't like the color balance, right? So you can really experiment with a lot of different adjustments and combinations of different things. So then you can see if you really like it, and if you don't, you can just hide it and play around with the color. So really, really, one of the super features of Photoshop is the layer masking and the ability to add adjustment layers and do a bunch of different things to your imagery. And um, as I showed you on this one with the black and white, you can come here and you could adjust, again, play around with the reds and yellows and the cyans. Even though the image is black and white, you still can kind of come in here and just play with the lights and the dark. So really interesting. Again, this is a lot of experimentation. These two images I had not even really put together before, but sometimes you play with it and you come up with some really interesting ways of doing things. Now, one thing is important is if you want to move the image on the mask, okay, if you want to move this image, let's say you want to move this guy, move him to the right, make sure when you're not on the mask layer, if you're trying to move it, make sure that you're on the actual image if you want to move the image around, and the mask will go with it. Okay, now it might be that if we didn't clean out all of this, you may have some extra, you know, you may have some extra uh, part of the image. If the image is much bigger, you may have to go in there and clean it up afterwards. But you certainly want, if you want to move something, make sure and select the actual image to move it. And if you want to mask something, make sure you have the mask selected. There's a little highlight over the mask that you know that you're masking. Um, but here, when you select it, you have the actual image on it. Okay, so that's it for this week that's coming up. As you know, your first project is due. Make sure you look at your rubric. Make sure you look at all the um, requirements. It's a designer statement. Make sure you save all the elements in the correct formats and upload everything. If anybody have any problems, please post it to the discussion board for the project. If it's something personal you have an issue with, certainly do not post it there. You can post it, you can email me directly. If you're having any issues with technology, or if any of you have been called out the duty or anything like that, please let me know ahead of time. Um, Once we get past week 3, week 4 and 5 will come pretty quickly for the second project. It's due week 5, and then the third project is due week 7, and the final is due after week 8. So again, everybody has been doing a really good job with the discussion posts, and I want to commend everyone for really getting into the discussions and bringing a lot of extra knowledge and extra, connections, um, and just keeping the conversations going. And it's definitely, you guys are one of the best classes I've had. With, I think, not just extrapolating just stuff, but really getting into the nitty gritty of the programs and stuff that you have experienced and encountered and actually practicing. So keep that up, keep it going. Certainly, really appreciate that, and do well in your first project. And excited to see what you guys come up with. So this is out over and out for week 3 intro. Have a good. Hope everybody had a good holiday and back to school.